Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha in Volume 3, chapters 21 through chapters 30. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. The way that we do this program is I invite volunteers from Zoom to be able to read one of the chapters, or as many as you like, during the class, and then I share some teachings on that particular chapter, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the chapter. You can ask questions by putting those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom you can raise your hand electronically and ask any and all questions that you like. So once again, welcome to all of you guys. We're going to start with chapter 21. Is there anybody who would like to read this one? Okay, looks like Pat's volunteering to read this one.
Chapter 21. Gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle even for an arahant. Monks, gain, honor, and praise, I say, are an obstacle even for a monk who is an arahant, one with taints destroyed. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda asked the Master Teacher Gotama, "Why, Venerable Sir, are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle even for a monk with taints destroyed?" "I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind, but I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings in this very life which are achieved by one who resides diligent, dedicated, and determined. So dreadful, Ananda, are gain, honor, and praise, so bitter, vile, obstructive to achieving the unsurpassed security from bondage, enlightenment. Therefore, Ananda, you should train yourselves thus. We will abandon the arisen gain, honor, praise, and we will not let the arisen gain, honor, and praise persist obsessing our mind. Thus should you train yourselves.
Okay, thank you, sir. So here, this is a discourse from the Buddha where he's essentially talking about the conceit that arises in the mind, the ego, the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing and judging others. But he's talking about it here as gain, honor, and praise because somebody can share a compliment with you. Now there's a certain amount of honor or praise that's coming to you, or say you gain something, like maybe you have a raise at work or you get a new house or a new car. This gain, honor, and praise can obsess the mind and make it challenging for you to get to enlightenment. And that's what the Buddha is essentially talking about here. He starts off with saying, monks, gain, honor, and praise, I say, are an obstacle even for a monk who is an arahant, one with taints destroyed. An arahant is an individual who's enlightened. That's what they would refer to an enlightened being as during the lifetime of the Buddha. Today we would just say enlightened being, but arahant is a way to refer to someone who's completely eliminated all the fetters and their mind's completely purified. That's why the Buddha is describing this person as one with taints destroyed. The pollutions are eliminated from the mind. And the Buddha is saying that they are an obstacle. This gain, honor, and praise is an obstacle. If someone compliments you or you have some honor, maybe you get a certificate or an award, or maybe you get a raise at work, the Buddha is saying, hey, this is an obstacle for an enlightened being. And then one of his closest students, Ananda, is saying, oh, hold on a second, like, sir, excuse me, venerable sir, why are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle for a monk with taints destroyed? He's saying, in his mind, he's probably thinking, well, if someone's enlightened, why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle? Because they're all already enlightened. There wouldn't be any obstacles at all because their mind is at ease and completely peaceful. And then the Buddha comes in and says, I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind. What he's saying is, I didn't say that it was a obstacle once he's enlightened, but I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of enlightenment. That's what he's saying. In order to attain enlightenment, this gain, honor, and praise can be an obstacle, because when you're hearing these things and when these things are occurring in your life, you can allow it to arise conceit. Or if you're diligent and dedicated and determined, you won't allow it to arise conceit. You will train your mind to not allow that to occur. So the Buddha is saying here, so dreadful, bitter, and vile, this gain, honor, and praise, it's going to affect you from being able to attain enlightenment. So he is explaining the way that you train yourself is you train yourself to abandon any arisen gain, honor, and praise. So when somebody's praising you or you're having anything honorable happen or you're getting this gain, don't allow it to obsess your mind. That someone might compliment you. You can't control that. So all you can do is control your own mind, that when somebody's complimenting you, you might say, thank you, I appreciate your kind words, or whatever it is that you share, but you don't allow it to dwell in the mind, that you need to cut it off and let it go, as you've learned in other teachings where the Buddha teaches you to cut off and let go. So he's explaining to his students to not allow this gain, honor, and praise to arise pleasant feelings and become arrogant and prideful and boastful in your day-to-day life, because this is an obstacle for you to obtain enlightenment. Because an enlightened being isn't going to be prideful and boastful, arrogant, and talking down to people. They're going to be polite and respectful in all situations. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. This is Volume 3, Chapter 21. Remember, you can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere, so we'll move on to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this one, Chapter 22? Okay, Samantha, go ahead, ma'am.
How is a monk mindful and exercising clear comprehension? And how, monks, is a monk mindful? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. It is in such a way that a monk is mindful. And how, monks, does a monk exercise clear comprehension? Here, monks, a monk is one who acts with clear comprehension when going forward and returning, when looking ahead and looking aside, when drawing in and extending the limbs, when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, when eating, drinking, chewing his food and tasting, when defecating and urinating, when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking, and keeping silent. It is in such a way that a monk exercises clear comprehension.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here the Buddha is explaining right mindfulness and right concentration, a certain aspect of right concentration. If you remember back to when you learned the Eightfold Path with me, we talked about mindfulness in detail. We talked about it first just kind of as awareness of mind, that you need to develop right mindfulness, where you just have general awareness of mind. But then more specifically, you'll need to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're able to discern and be able to notice when there's the bodily sensations associated with cravings, desires, attachments arising. There's going to be this early warning system that is occurring. And when you notice that, you can cut it off and let it go. With something like anger, it might be, tingling in the body, rising up towards the chest, or tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, maybe heat in the face or pressure in the skull. These are all the early warning systems that the mind's about to get angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. And there can be these same bodily sensations not only for the painful feelings, but for the pleasant feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant as well. That's that early warning system to cut off and let go. And the Buddha teaches you to have awareness of this. And you may not have awareness of this right now, depending on how well you've developed your mind at this point. It's breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing mindfulness in daily life, general awareness of mind, that's going to help you to develop these 4 foundations. The first foundation is the bodily sensations, because you would like to cut off and let go of any discontentedness as it arises as a bodily sensation. If you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. This is where the mind is now angry, right? So when you're cutting off at the bodily sensations, it's not suppressing your feelings because it hasn't even become a feeling yet. You're cutting it off before it even becomes a feeling. It's kind of like if you were in a boat, maybe going from Australia to Indonesia, and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat, because once it gets in, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out of the boat. So once the anger comes into the mind as a feeling, you've got a real problem to deal with. So you would like to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. But if you miss it there, you can cut it off as a feeling. You got to notice it there, take action and cut it off. And you'll be better and better at doing that when you're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity. That's going to train the mind to let go. And that's why those are daily practices that you're doing. And if you miss it as a feeling, it's going to now affect the condition of the mind. That's what the Buddha means when he says mind as mind, being aware of the condition of the mind. And this is where you might have noticed that you've been grumpy or irritable or annoyed for a few hours or a few days or maybe even a week or two. And you would like to catch it before it ever gets to that point, because as long as you allow the mind to dwell in these feelings, or if you allow the mind to dwell in the condition of the mind being grumpy and irritable, the mind staying wired that way. You're trying to transform the mind and rewire it so it doesn't form a conditioned feeling. So the sooner you can catch it, the better. And the condition of the mind, it's possible to cut it off and let it go there, but you'd like to back that up as early as possible, cutting it off as a bodily sensation, because then it's going to start feeding these mental objects. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. This is the 10 fetters. Those are all mental objects. There's other ways we refer to mental objects as well, but most of the time when we talk about mental objects, we're using them as these deeply rooted containers in the mind, typically referring to the fetters. We typically refer to them as unwholesome, but there can be wholesome mental objects, and we can also use this word mental objects in other ways. You'll see in the words of the Buddha, we use it for like thoughts and ideas and things like this, but generally, we're most often using it in this context where we're referring to the things that you're trying to eliminate from the mind and purify the mind of. So this is why, like the retreat that I just taught, where I was teaching the 10 fetters in detail, you're going to need to know what the fetter is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So having mindfulness of the mental objects is, you can see the conceit in your own mind. You can see the arrogance and the boastfulness, for example, arising. Or, you can see that doubt about the teachings. Or, you can see that personal existence view. Or you can see the restlessness in the mind, or the desire for form or formless, or some of these other fetters. You need to be able to notice these mental objects as they are arising, because some of them don't have bodily sensations. The personal existence view, if that gets triggered, it has bodily sensations, or sensual desire, ill will, some of these. But something like conceit doesn't typically have bodily sensations, or doubt about the teachings doesn't typically have bodily sensations associated with it. So that's why separately you need to be able to be observant and aware of these mental objects. So this is the Buddha describing right mindfulness, to have awareness of these 4 foundations of mindfulness. And in this chapter, I put in the chart to be able to help you guys understand this and decipher it of what it actually is. And if you haven't read this yet, you can read it, because I talk about what are the 4 foundations of mindfulness to be able to help you. So that's what mindfulness is having awareness of the mind. That's what you're generally starting out with. But then more deeply, by this point, if you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha, for 6 months or a year and a half, you would like to get better and better at being able to recognize any kind of arising of discontentedness as a bodily sensation. This is the early warning system. The mind's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. You got some time. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And that's where you can cut it off and let it go and say, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And now more and more, your mind won't do it because you've actually eliminated the cravings, desires, attachments. But if you allow the mind to get that conditioned feeling, it moved from a bodily sensation to now it's a feeling. You can cut it off and let it go there. It's more challenging, but you can do that. And that'll help you to get back closer and closer to the bodily sensations. If you don't do that, now it's going to affect the condition of the mind for a few hours, a few days, a week or so. And then it's going to start feeding these mental objects and get them more and more deeply rooted. So if you allow the mind to be angry, it's going to fill up this ill will in the mind or these other deeply rooted containers, these mental objects. Then the Buddha is talking about singleness of mind here. This is one aspect of right concentration. When I taught you guys right concentration in the foundational classes, you saw in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha describes the jhanas. And I mentioned to you that, hey, this is describing the results of the Eightfold Path, but there's other places where the Buddha describes right concentration. And this is one aspect of right concentration, where he's explaining clear comprehension, which is concentration. And what he's talking about here is practicing singleness of mind. And he's relating it to activities that a monk would be involved in, where he's saying, okay, you function with concentration or singleness of mind. He actually uses the phrase singleness of mind in other places, that when you're going forward and returning, meaning when you're walking back and forth, or when you're looking ahead or you're looking aside, or drawing in the limbs or extending the limbs, when you're wearing your robes, meaning you're putting on your clothes, when you're carrying your outer robe and bowl, when you're eating, drinking, chewing food, tasting, defecating, urinating, right? You would like to have singleness of mind. If you've ever been on the toilet using the phone and you dropped it in the toilet, that's your karma, because you're not practicing singleness of mind, right? Or if you ever notice that if you're trying to defecate or urinate and you're trying to look at the phone, that doesn't happen as easily and as well, right? Like if you set those things aside and just focus on defecating or urinating, you can get your business done and boom, bada bing, bada boom, and get out of there and be done with it. But if you sit there and just kind of looking at your phone or looking at newspapers and things like this, it's occupying the mind and it's not allowing the body to do what it needs to do. And the same thing when you're walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking, or keeping silent. The Buddha is essentially saying, have this concentration, this focus, this singleness of mind. So anytime you notice that the mind's wandering, like you're washing dishes and the mind's wandering, cut that off and bring the mind back. Or if you're on the phone and your mind's wandering to something else, cut that off and bring it back. More and more, your mind's going to stay focused. And I've given that analogy where I talk about the piece of wood and the steel rod, and you grind this back and forth, you get a deeper and deeper groove. But initially, the rod's going to bounce around because there's no groove there. But when you do this long enough, you get a deeper and deeper groove. So when you practice singleness of mind for longer and longer periods of time, your mind will ultimately just stay in that focus. And that's what the Buddha is describing to you here, is to be able to practice singleness of mind, develop right concentration, so that now you can have this clear comprehension. Because that's going to help you bring forth all the other factors of the Eightfold Path in terms of right intention, right speech, right action, all these other factors, even mindfulness. By having this concentration, it's going to help you to be able to bring forth all of that and practice in such a way that you can have the wisdom to be able to now have wise conversations that don't produce any unwholesome results for you. So let me know what questions you guys have here, if you have any about mindfulness or concentration that you'd like to talk about. Looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
The first sentence after the table that you have says, to develop awareness of the mind, you should not allow the mind to be lost in daydreams. Is that just when you're actively doing meditation or practicing mindfulness, or is it detrimental to ever daydream? Say if you're just sitting on the couch and you're just kind of enjoying being quiet, Should you be making a concerted effort to concentrate on something, or is it okay to just be?
You can just be, but you would like to have mindfulness and awareness of the mind during that situation. So there's going to be times where you're just sitting on the sofa and maybe you're just thinking about your life and you're looking at the things you did that day, or you're looking at the things you did that week, and you're trying to figure out, what did I do wisely, what did I do unwisely? Or you might be thinking about the future, and now you're thinking about, hey, what do I need to do in the next few days to make this project happen or make this thing work? So in that situation, you're not just lost in daydreaming and just kind of like la la land. Instead, you're focused on something. Your mind is practicing singleness of mind. And during that time period, you're practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind, so that if anything arises, you can cut it off and let it go. Okay, so I think she got her answer there. Looks like, Helena, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So, since the body can do two things simultaneously or three things simultaneously, then why would it be not beneficial to do something really easy like cleaning and listen to a podcast?
Because what's happening is the mind is jumping back and forth, and you're not practicing singleness of mind of doing one thing at a time. For some people, depending on where they are in their life, that's might be where they're at. Like, I have single moms that study with me, and they might have 3 kids, and they also have their own business. And it's all that they can do to just be cleaning the house and listening to a podcast. And that's the only way that they can get the teachings in, because otherwise they wouldn't have the ability to learn. But as they're learning and they're growing and they're developing and they like to hone in that concentration, then they'll slowly start to take some things out of their life and be able to get to the point where they're just listening to the teachings, or they're just cleaning, or they're just doing one thing at a time. But in the process of getting to that point, you might need to do those kinds of things. But if you're doing that, what your mind's doing is it's flipping back and forth. And now let's just say you're like cutting an onion and you're listening to some music or something like that. This is where you can lose your concentration and you slip up and you cut yourself, because the mind's not practicing singleness of mind. So you'd like to do just one thing at a time so that you can hone the mind and do just one thing. And this is getting to the point where you're comfortable slowing your life down, because sometimes we try to hurry up and squeeze in as much as we can in any one particular day. And your mind needs to get used to not chasing after things and craving and longing and yearning, and realizing that by doing things single-threadedly, you'll actually do things better with more wisdom, and the final result will be better. Whereas if you're trying to do 2 or 3 things at one time and your mind's rapidly cycling, you're going to be making mistakes along the way that you're going to have to go back and clean up. So if you're going to practice singleness of mind, then this will help you to develop your concentration. This will help you to bring forth your full practice. If you're practicing all these other factors of the Eightfold Path, you're going to need to be able to have singleness of mind. But if you're cleaning and you're listening to the music, now you can't have awareness of your mind, that when that discontentedness is arising, to be aware of it. The other thing, and the reason why the Buddha taught singleness of mind, is you need to be able to know what is it that's arising this discontentedness. If you're cleaning and you're listening to music, you don't know, is it the smell of the cleaning solution that's causing the discontentedness to arise in that moment, or is it the music? You don't know which one it is. So you would like to discern exactly what it is and get to the point where you can see these cravings so clearly, and then you can more surgically remove them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to check Facebook and YouTube. All right, I don't see any questions there, so we'll go to the next chapter, chapter 23. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, looks like Helena's first, and then Vibhav will come to you for the next one.
Wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. That being so, Ananda, remember this too as wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. Hear, Ananda. For the Tathagata feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Perceptions are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Thoughts are known as they arise, as they are present, and as they disappear. Remember this too, Ananda. as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata.
Okay, thank you, Helena. So here what the Buddha is describing is a quality of mind for an enlightened being. And of course, he's a Tathagata, he's a Buddha, but he's explaining what's going on in his mind and how his mind functions so that other people can aspire to cultivate these same qualities. So what he's saying is that as feelings arise, they're known, that he knows when they arise, when they're present, and when they disappear. And this would have been prior to his enlightenment because he wouldn't have had conditioned feelings after enlightenment, right? So he was aware when these feelings arise, when they're changing, and when they're fading away. He's talking about mindfulness, that he has this mindfulness well developed. And then the same thing is true about perceptions. Remember, a perception is a view or opinion, that he's aware of it as it arises, as it's present and it's there, and as it disappears. He's aware of these views and opinions because you're going to need to know not to cling to these things that as they're arising. So your mindfulness is there to help you see that, hey, this is just your opinion, this is your view, this is your perception. It's not necessarily truth. It's just something that you perceive to be true. And then there's going to be certain thoughts that arise, that are present and disappear. So you're going to need to cultivate that mindfulness in a way that you're aware of the feelings, the perceptions, and the thoughts as they're arising, as they exist, and as they disappear. And that's the mindfulness that he's talking about. Let me know what questions you guys have here. It looks like Vibhav, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Just can you please clarify I think you made this point that he's probably saying it before his enlightenment, but I guess the passage did not say that. So does an enlightened being, from what you've been describing before, has feeling but they can cut it off early, or that they will not have any feelings or perceptions or thoughts arise?
An enlightened being won't have any conditioned feelings. These are based on some condition, like the mind is experiencing the pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. They will have unconditioned mental qualities where the mind will just always be joyful, for example, or always be peaceful. It doesn't matter what's going on. There's just always joy and peace in the mind. And I describe that as a mental quality because it's persistent in the mind. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. It's a permanent mental quality. Whenever we talk about feelings and whenever the Buddha talks about feelings, he's talking about conditioned feelings. And that's how one of the reasons why I know that here he's talking about before his enlightenment, because you won't have conditioned feelings as an enlightened being. You will have perceptions, you'll have views and opinions, but those will be based in wisdom, where in the unenlightened state, we can have views and opinions that are misperceptions or false truths or things like this. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have the clarity to know that this is the truth. Right? And you'll also have thoughts when you're in the enlightened mental state, but you won't cling to those thoughts. And you'll be aware that there is a thought, you'll be aware that it's arisen, that it's present, and that it's disappeared. But in terms of conditioned feelings, you won't have those during the time that the mind is actually enlightened. It'll just be permanent mental qualities that are just always there. And remember, these are conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, you're now going to feel this. So like, when I come to see you in California, Vibhav, I'm not going to be excited. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be excited to see you. I will enjoy seeing you. It will be fun to spend time with you, but it would also be fun to stay here with my family, or it'll also be fun to travel in the airport. I'll also enjoy sitting in the restaurant and eating here in Chiang Mai. I'll also enjoy riding my motorbike from the temple to my house, right? So everything's going to be enjoyable, but you're not experiencing conditional feelings based on some condition that you're now going to experience pleasure, pain, or neither pain nor pleasure. Instead, your mind is just always enjoying everything that you're doing. And this is what you can get to when you get rid of those conditioned feelings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 24. And Vibhav, I think you were going to read this one, right?
Sure. The 6 subjects of conscious awareness. How many subjects of conscious awareness are there, Ananda? There are, Venerable Sir, 5 subjects of conscious awareness. Good, Ananda. Therefore, Ananda, remember the sixth subject of conscious awareness too. Here, ever mindful a monk goes forward, ever mindful he returns, ever mindful he stands, ever mindful he sits, ever mindful he lies down to sleep, ever mindful he undertakes work. This subject of conscious awareness, developed and cultivated in this way, leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension.
Okay, so here the Buddha is giving you 6 times that you would like to have mindfulness. In reality, the way he teaches is he teaches you to have mindfulness all the time, every moment of the day, from the moment you're first waking up all day long until you're going to sleep. But here he's giving you 6 things to remind you that, okay, during these times, to be sure you have mindfulness. These aren't the only 6, but these are the times where he's reminding you to be sure that you have awareness of mind, that you have mindfulness. So here he's saying, when you're going forward and you're returning, when you're sitting and standing, to be sure that you have mindfulness or awareness of mind. But also when you're lying down, right? Because when you're lying down on the bed and you're starting to wake up in the morning, you can have your thoughts invade you. Like, oh gosh, do I really have to go to work today? I don't want to see that guy at that business meeting or that girl at the business meeting. No, I don't want to see that person. Your thoughts can invade you, and you got to be able to cut that off and let it go. Or when you're dozing off at night, you can have your thoughts invading you at that moment. You can be like halfway to sleep and halfway awake, and your thoughts can be invading the mind. And you're going to need to have awareness of mind during that period of time to be able to cut off and let go, so you can purify the mind and get to the point where the mind is experiencing the peace and the joy. And then the same thing when you're working. When you're at work in a business meeting, you need to have awareness of the mind, so that when the mind is wandering or daydreaming during your meeting, you can cut that off and let it go. Or if you're sitting in your boss's office and your boss is talking to you and you notice your mind's wandering, you got to cut that off and let it go. So these are 6 times that the Buddha is reminding you to be sure that you have awareness of mind. So this isn't the only times, but it's the times that he's reminding you about. And he talks in other teachings where he says mindfulness is always useful. You should always be practicing mindfulness. But here he's talking specifically about these 6, just to remind you of that. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Remember, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Looks like Helena has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. So today morning in class, the live class, the presential class in Chiang Mai, we had a situation where a student got like very emotional. And how was that situation for you in terms of mindfulness and single-mindedness? Like, were you aware of your breath or of her and what she was saying, or of the classroom?
Yeah, all I was doing in that situation was listening to what she had to say and then trying to figure out what's the best way to help this person, if I could. But I could tell right from the beginning that my ability to help this person, it wasn't possible based on, what was going on in their own mind. So for me, my mind was focused on what they were saying. And then after they were done saying it, then I thought about, okay, how can I respond to this in a way that is going to be helpful for this individual? And that's it. And then when it was over, it was done and over. And all I did at that point was, there was a few students, you one of them, that had been studying with me for a while. We went to lunch, and I was just interested to be sure that you guys understood what I was teaching at that time, so that you guys wouldn't have any confusion about what it is that I was teaching, because she was definitely confused about that. So I was just focused on what she had to say. For my mind, it was just calm and stable and steady. There was no anger or frustration or agitation or annoyance or the slightest dislike. In fact, her friend came up afterwards and apologized for her friend. And I let her friend know. I said, no, it's okay. I said, you didn't do anything. I said, if she calms down and she would like to come back and talk, she's more than welcome to come back and talk, because I love all beings and I don't have any expectations of her. And I understand that these things can happen. So I let her know that. So there's nothing in my mind other than how can I help this person. And then afterwards there was nothing but loving kindness and compassion, which is a genuine interest for this person's well-being and concern for their misfortune. It's so unfortunate that this person's mind was like this, because they're not only struggling in a situation where they're in a classroom with me, but they're struggling in many other parts of their life, and they just haven't taken the opportunity to be able to learn what it takes to be able to get rid of all of that. And now they're just having all kinds of issues because it's not the first time that they've ever done something like that in the classroom with me. And now all of that is just going to affect them for the rest of their life until they decide that they're going to eliminate this lack of wisdom, train their mind, and get rid of their craving and anger.
So, but when she was talking, you weren't thinking about it? Like, oh, this person is acting in such and such way, it means this and that. Like nothing, just listening.
Yeah, I was just listening. I wasn't judging her as, that she's good or bad or anything like this. It was just listening to what she had to say. And I could tell that she was angry even when she just first started talking, that she had craving and desire, and the language that she was using, her tone, her word choice, her jumping around to different topics. I could tell her mind was already shaken up. So I was just listening to what she had to say. And then after I heard what she had to say, I was able to reply because my mind was able to understand what would be the best way to reply. But I couldn't reply because she kept cutting me off like 2 or 3 times. And since I couldn't reply, then I just knew that I couldn't help this person. And with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, it wasn't the proper time to talk. So I just told her, okay, our conversation is finished. I don't have relationships like this with students, and I'm not interested in having that kind of relationship. So we're going to end our conversation. But if you would like to come talk to me after class, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Vibhav, if you have a question, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, David. I had a question around work, undertakes work. So I have noticed that being more focused and doing one thing at a time, being more focused in meetings and being more mindful actually helps in making better decisions and understand the context of what other people are saying, and actually improving the quality of work. The question more specifically is, in my work is basically it's very, very fast moving. A lot of things happen that, and things come from, you're basically doing 5, 10 things that you're assigned to do 5, 10 things at the same time. And you need to kind of be aware and mindful and focused on, you can't focus on the same thing at the same time, but you have to do a lot of context switching to make sure things are, you're responsible for actually being done as needed. So I just wanted to get some guidance on how to ensure that you're doing a good job and the 10 things that you're kind of asked to do at the same time.
Yeah. Just because someone's asking you to do multiple things doesn't mean that you need to do that, because your mind actually can't do that anyway. All that's happening, like if somebody's writing an email, they're talking on the phone, and then somebody walks in your office, all you're doing is your mind's rapidly cycling between those things. You would like to just do one thing at a time. So if you're writing your email and the phone rings, you need to stop writing your email and then answer the phone. Or just let your phone roll to voicemail and then you'll call them back so you can stay focused on what it is that you're doing. Or if somebody walks into your office and you're writing an email, you might just need to hold up a finger to let them know one moment, and then you finish up your email and then you address them. Or if you're writing the email and they walk in and you would rather talk to the person instead of continue with the email, you're going to need to stop and break from the email and then talk to the person that's there. Whereas if your mind is switching back and forth like this, it's going to make it overactive. And this is where if you've done 8 or 10 or 12 hours of this, where your mind's rapidly cycling, when you get home, you'll find it very hard to be relaxed because the mind will be overactive. It's like a racehorse. If you ever go to the racetrack with a racehorse, they're in the chute, they're jumping and jumping, they just can't wait to get out of that chute. And then boom, they shoot around the track. And when they take them back to the barn, they can't calm down. They're just like, go, 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 go. They're just, really revved up. And that's the way your mind is that if you do that all day long at work, when you get home, you'll find it very challenging to relax because your mind's all revved up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me check on YouTube and Facebook if we have any questions. Don't see any questions there. So let's go to the next chapter. If there's someone who would like to volunteer to read this one, just let me know. Okay, looks like Yihang, and then we'll go to Helena after that.
Thank you. Having full awareness when lying down. Ananda, if his mind inclines to lying down, he lies down thinking, while I am lying down thus, no evil, unwholesome status will invade me. In this way, he has full awareness of that.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here, just a short little passage where the Buddha is basically reminding Ananda that even when you're lying down, kind of dozing off to sleep, that you need to be aware of the mind. And he explains that in the previous discourse too, but this really focuses on it. This is how attentive you need to be to the mind. You're going to need to learn how to relax and fall asleep while at the same time being attentive to the mind. This is something you might have to train the mind to do because maybe you're used to being alert, fully alert, but yet you're trying to fall asleep, so you're going to need to train your mind to have awareness, this general awareness of what's going on, so that if any unwholesome states arise, you can cut them off and let them go. But at the same time, you're going to sleep as well. So that's what the Buddha is describing here, having this mindfulness or awareness when you're lying down. So not just in your day-to-day life, when you're out and about and you're driving the car, you're walking down the street, you're eating at a restaurant, but even when you're lying down on the bed in the morning or in the evening, when you're going to sleep, you're going to need to have that mindfulness. So any questions here? Okay, looks like Viphav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I guess on sleeping itself, even if I try to be cutting off all the thoughts before going to sleep, once the mind eventually, when you actually drift off to sleep, I still have dreams. So at what point does the dreaming stop happening? Because the mind is still it's active while sleeping. It's like,
yeah, even when you're enlightened, you'll still have dreams. You can't control whether you have dreams or not. As you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment, you might notice that you go a long period of time without dreams. I noticed that I went maybe 8 years or 10 years without dreams. I've seen doctors that say you can't get a restful sleep without dreams, but this isn't actually true because I went like 8 or 10 years without even dreaming at all. But you might notice that your dreams come in at different times. Even when your mind's enlightened, you'll have dreams. So the dreams aren't the problem. The problem would be is if you wake up from the dream and now your mind's discontent, that's what you need to take care of. So if you notice that you have regular dreams of dying and you wake up with fear in your mind, then you're going to need to look at that and realize that you have attachment and craving to existence, and you're going to need to eliminate that. Or say you wake up and you had this dream that you were homeless and now you feel a certain discontent feeling because of that, because you didn't have any money or something like that. That shows you what your mind is attached to. Or maybe you're dreaming about a partner that's long in the past. You haven't talked to them in maybe 10, 15, 20 years, and your mind wakes up having had a dream about them. It shows that your mind's still holding on to these things. But you will have dreams just when you wake up. Just remember that they're not true. It's not true reality, and cut that off and let it go no matter what's going on in the mind. Just wipe your hands clean of it and just move on with your day.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So Helena, Yihang, you have a question here?
Yes, sorry, I was a bit slow. I was just thinking, when falling into sleep, sometimes it feels like the mind can easily fall into sleep, but sometimes also happens to maybe if the body and the mind already gets a bit tired and then went to bed and sleep, and after a while feels a bit not that tired anymore, and then maybe would like to decide to not sleeping. But then another feeling comes into feel like it has to be sleeping because tomorrow has something to do, and then that pressure comes in again. I'm not sure if in this case would that be wise to choose not fall the body and the mind to sleep if it's not really being, and just get up and do something, or just lie down there and try to sleep?
Yeah, you're not interested in just lying there if your mind is just ruminating over things. If you're laying there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and the mind hasn't fallen asleep yet, it's good to get up, go walk around, go do something, whatever it is that you need to do, and then come back again and try later. Whereas if you just stay there and try to force the mind to sleep, it's like putting a round peg into a square hole. So if you notice your mind is ruminating and ruminating and ruminating and having obsessive thoughts, that's where you can redirect it by getting up and going to do something else. And then that'll kind of cut that cycle of that obsessive thoughts, and then you can come back and try again later. Because the way that you're going to get to the point where you can easily fall asleep each day is that you train the mind and you train the body to be able to do this, where you don't allow it to just dwell in those obsessive thoughts. But that's not to say that if in 5 or 10 minutes you notice that you have obsessive thoughts, you could also get up there too and redirect the mind. Or because you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation and you've already done your 2 or 3 meditations in your day, if you're laying in bed at night and you're noticing the mind's having obsessive thoughts, you could focus the mind on the breath, do some nice deep inhalation and exhaling through the nose. It's not one of your 2 or 3 meditations per day for 30 minutes or more, but the benefits that you've accumulated in meditation in your 2 or 3 sessions, you can actually use that to your benefit when you're looking to fall asleep by just doing some nice inhales and exhales and focusing the mind on the breath, and you'll notice that you'll be able to fall asleep nicely that way.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, I think time for Helena to read this next chapter. So go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Chapter 26. From darkness to light. From light to light. And how great king is a person one heading from darkness to light? Here some person has been reborn in a low family, a family of kandalas, bamboo workers, hunters, cartwrights, or waste collectors, a poor family in which there is little food and drink and which subsist with difficulty, one where food and clothing are obtained with difficulty, and he is ugly, unsightly, deformed, chronically blind, or cripple-handed, or lame, or paralyzed. He is not one who gains food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garlands, scents, and ointments, bedding, housing, and lighting. He engages in wholesome conduct of body, speech, and mind. Having done so, with the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. Suppose, great king, a man would climb from the ground onto a palanquin, or from a palanquin onto a horseback, or from horseback to an elephant mount, or from an elephant mount to a mansion. This person, I say, is exactly similar. It is in this way, great king, that a person is one heading from darkness to light. And how, great king, is a person one heading from light to light? Here some person has been reborn in a high family, an affluent Katiya family, an affluent Brahmin family, or an affluent householder family. One which is rich, with great wealth and prosperity, with abundant gold and silver, abundant treasures and commodities, with abundant wealth and grain, and he is handsome, attractive, graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion. He is one who gains food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garlands, scents, and ointments, bedding, housing, and lighting. He engages in a wholesome conduct of body, speech, and mind. Having done so, with the breakup of the body, after death, he is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. Suppose, great king, a man would cross over from palanquin to palanquin, or from horseback to horseback, or from elephant mount to elephant mount, or from mansion to mansion. This person, I say, is exactly similar. It is in this way, great king, that a person is one heading from light to light.
Okay, thank you, Helena. So the Buddha is teaching people to walk towards the light, meaning awaken the mind and get to this wholesome mental state of enlightenment where the mind is bright and uplifted. And he was teaching that anybody and everybody can get to enlightenment, because during this time frame and even now, people oftentimes think that wherever you're born, you're destined for a certain life based on where you're born. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a strong caste system in place that if you were born in what they are referring to as a low family, someone who is just kind of like average workers, that it was thought that, okay, your life is kind of destined for this life of, kind of servitude and disgruntledness, and your life's never really going to amount to much. But what the Buddha was doing is he was teaching people, no, it's not about where you were born. It's about your wisdom and how you cultivate your mind. And you can make wise decisions and you can move your life forward and you can move towards this light. So here he's talking, about someone who's born into a family which is considered to be a family that has less resources, that this individual can actually move to higher and higher and improved states of mind. Essentially, he's talking about getting into the heavenly world, but you can also look at this as moving to an improved states of mind, that moving from this family that is impoverished to a better existence through training of the mind. And he's relating this to an individual who moves from palanquin to horseback. What a palanquin is one of those things that if there was like a bunch of people holding a platform, and then like maybe there's 4 or 5 or 6 people holding a platform, and then a person gets on top of the palanquin, they're like being carted across the earth, being carried by human beings. That's what a palanquin is. So if you're going from the ground to the palanquin to the horseback to an elephant to a mansion, the Buddha is showing this individual is climbing higher and higher, moving closer and closer to the light, going from the darkness to the light. But then he's talking about there's some people who are born into kind of a rich, affluent family, and then they're also can be moving towards the light as well. And he's talking about this as moving from palanquin to palanquin or horseback to horseback, that you're just kind of moving sideways essentially rather than upwards. But both of this is what you would aspire to accomplish, is no matter where you're born, whether you're born in an affluent family or whether you're born into a family that has less resources, you would like to always be walking towards the light. So any questions here on this chapter? Okay, Helena, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm very surprised to see that the Buddha talks about physical beauty. And does he mean, in a sense, that physical beauty is a consequence of good karma?
Yes. He talks about this as part of our karma, that based on how we appear in life, that if we have appearance that is more beautiful, this is from our wholesome karma from our previous lives. And then if we don't look so great, then that's also our karma from our previous lives as well. And by the time we get to studying the natural law of karma in detail, he's going to talk about the exact causes that lead to rebirth of looking not so beautiful. And you'll see that in his discourses.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Don't see any other questions anywhere. Okay, so let's move to the next chapter. This is chapter 27. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, go ahead, Vibhav. And then Samantha, you can take the next one.
Harmoniously without disputes. Monks, wherever monks are residing in calmness, harmoniously without disputes, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with eyes of affection, I am at ease about going there, let alone about directing my attention there. I conclude, surely those venerable ones have abandoned the 3 things and cultivated 3 other things. What are the 3 things they have abandoned? Sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. These are the 3 things they have abandoned. What are the 3 things they have cultivated? Thoughts of renunciation, letting go, thoughts of goodwill, thoughts of harmlessness. These are the 3 things they have cultivated. Wherever monks are residing in calmness, harmoniously, without disputes, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with eyes of affection, I am at ease about going there, let alone about directing my attention there. I conclude, surely those venerable ones have abandoned these 3 things and cultivated these 3 other things.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So you guys might actually be identifying what the Buddha is talking about here. If you've been studying and you memorize the Eightfold Path, you might notice what he's talking about here is right intention. That the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. That's what he's talking about here, about the things that people have cultivated. And he's saying, okay, when there's a group of students that have abandoned central thoughts, thoughts of ill will and harming, he's at ease about going there. An enlightened being can go anywhere and be at ease, but he's saying, okay, essentially, like, I enjoy going here more so than over here to this other place where people haven't eliminated their central thoughts, their ill will, or their harming. So he's pointing out to his students to cultivate this right intention, because obviously if you're studying directly with the Buddha, you would like to be around this person and you would like to be able to learn the wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment. So if you and a group of students are cultivating these particular qualities, then a wise individual, in this case a Buddha, an enlightened being, is going to be interested in spending time here. And this is what you would like to do, where Helena, going back to what we experienced today in class, if there was a group of people like that, there's not going to be very many people that are interested in being around that, right? And now these individuals aren't going to be able to cultivate the qualities that they need to ascend above that. So by you cultivating these qualities, anybody choosing to cultivate these qualities of right intention, where you have thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of goodwill, and thoughts of harmlessness, this is going to promote your ability to have right intention and ultimately get to enlightenment. But also, the Buddha is pointing out here that wise individuals, him and enlightened beings, would be comfortable even more so than other places to be around individuals like that. And that is going to promote a lot of benefit for you to be around individuals who are wise and have cultivated their mind, because then you can gain the wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment as well. So any questions on this one? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we'll move to the next chapter. This is chapter 28. So someone who would like to read this? Oh, Samantha was supposed to read this. Go ahead, ma'am.
Disputes arise from craving. Craving is a cause of seeking. Seeking is a cause of gaining material possessions. Gaining material possessions is the cause of evaluating. Evaluating is a cause of desire. Desire is the cause of clinging. Clinging is a cause of possessiveness. Possessiveness is a cause of stinginess. Stinginess is a cause of guarding of possessions. And because of the guarding of possessions, many unwholesome, unskillful things come to be. There arise the taking up of stick and sword, fights, disputes, arguments, accusations, harsh speech, lying, and other evil, unskilled states.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So the Buddha is, in my opinion, an expert at showing this cause and effect, this action and result. And he's showing you how one thing leads to another, and then that thing leads to the next thing, and that thing leads to the next thing. And the reason why he does this is because if you see down here at the bottom that, okay, what he's describing is people basically using weapons to fight and have disputes and arguments and accusations and harsh speech and lying and other evil, unskilled states. And you're looking at that and that's the outcome. You're like, I'm not interested in fighting. I'm not interested in arguments or disputes or accusations and harsh speech and all these other things. Well, okay, if you're not interested in any of these things, which is the outcome of what the Buddha's talking about, then all you got to do is go all the way back to the beginning and say, I've got to eliminate that. Because if I eliminate craving, then I won't have seeking. What seeking is where you're looking external for things. And now when you're seeking, you're looking external, then there's going to be this material possessions, that the mind is wanting to gain material possessions. And when you're gaining material possessions, you're going to be evaluating, meaning you're going to be judging other people about what do I have versus what do they have. And now when you are evaluating people and you're judging people of what they have versus what you have, then there's going to be more desire that's arising up in your mind where you want more things because you don't have as much as everybody else. Then you're going to be clinging to the things that you have. You're going to be holding on to it. And now the mind's going to become possessive. And the mind's going to be holding on and very possessive over these things. Then there's going to be this stinginess that comes in the mind. Then there's going to be this guarding of your possessions. And that's where all these other things are going to come about. So the Buddha is an expert at showing this cause and effect, and you can follow this sequence in your life and you can say, oh yeah, that's exactly what your mind's doing in the unenlightened state. You can see it in your mind and you can see it in other people's minds. And this is how you independently verify that, yes, the Buddha was a true Buddha, that he figured this out and he's showing you exactly what leads from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And then if you're not interested in these fights, disputes, arguments, harsh speech, and other things like this, then you just go back to the original cause and say, I'm going to eliminate that. And if I eliminate that, then I'll eliminate all these other things. And that's what you would ultimately like to get to. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So Helena's asking, what's the difference between craving and desire? So here we're using it as two different things, where craving is the longing, yearning externally, where you're seeking, and the desire is like the wanting in the mind and just kind of like wanting something. So oftentimes we describe it all as the same thing, as craving, desire, attachment, but there's actually different things that are happening there. The craving is the longing and yearning for something external. The desire is the wanting within the mind. The clinging or the attachment, that's holding on to it and wanting it to be permanent. These are the things that the mind's actually doing. But usually when someone's first getting started, I just describe all these things as the same thing until somebody gets deeper into the teachings to be able to see the level of granularity that is interesting about these words. So again, the craving is the longing and yearning. The desire is the wanting. The clinging or the attachment, that's the holding on to it and wanting it to be permanent. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Great questions, guys. All right, Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
So I guess this passage also kind of describes someone who's not necessarily, but always like with people who are like going on a job and they're, if you are trying to get a promotion or earn more wealth and things like those. And so how do you differentiate? I mean, how do you like disassociate from the act of like doing like your job and wanting kind of things like promotion or doing better for yourself from the actual, like what the actual craving and desire that this chapter is describing that. I mean, there is some association between the craving and desire for going to a job and then trying to get a promotion. Like, how do you dissociate those two things?
Okay.
Where you're working towards a promotion, but you're not actually craving, if I understand the question.
Yeah. So there's the craving, right? There's the longing and yearning for more money. And now if you get it, you'll be happy, but that's only temporary. It's going to rise, change, and fade away. And then you're going to ultimately be sad or frustrated, or you're going to want more. There's longing and yearning for it, where now you're forming your inner feelings of happiness or sadness based on whether you get that or not. But then there's also just wise decision making, that you realize that you live in a country that has a certain amount of inflation, and you're going to need to gradually increase your salary in order to keep up with inflation. Your children are getting older. You're going to need to send them to college, and you're going to need to gradually increase your income in order to be able to sustain your family and be able to help them to acquire the things that they need. And you can do that with wise decision making. You'll actually be more successful, but you're not forming your inner feelings based on this stuff. Right? So you can have a goal where, say, like in the next 3 years, you would like to be making X amount of dollars, and you can gradually work towards that. And let's just say you fall short. Say you're at the 3-year mark and you haven't gotten to that goal. Okay, well, if it's a true goal and you're walking towards it, as you say, then if it ends up being 3.5 years or 4 years or 5 years that you get to that, that's okay. And you just gradually work towards that through wise decision making. But if you have a craving and you get to that 3-year mark, you'll be sad, you'll feel guilty, you'll feel shameful or less of a person that you didn't get to that in the 3-year time frame that you had set out. So it's a matter of making wise decisions to walk towards something and not forming your inner feelings based on whether you acquire it or not.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess this point is very hard to kind of dissociate the two. it kind of ends up being, I mean, it is less so, but it seems to always come together where you could be happy in, on happiness is conditioned too, but you could be content and joyful in where you are, and I don't need anything more, and I'll live my life, and that's okay. If I do get a promotion, that's okay. If I don't get it, that's okay too. And you also may like not choose to like put extra effort to get a promotion, right? Because then it kind of, you seem to put that extra effort only because you want a promotion, not because you actually need it. And
Yes.
so it's a little bit hard to kind of dissociate the craving from like putting the effort, right?
Yeah, you might have trouble seeing this now because the way that the unenlightened mind functions is it tends to chase after things through craving. It doesn't understand how to gradually work towards something based in wise decisions. So those other options that you mentioned, those are options too. Let's just say they don't have a family, they don't have young kids like you have, and maybe they're like, you know what, I'm making plenty of money. Or maybe you have young kids and your salary is quite high. Maybe someone's making quite a bit of money and they're like, you know what, this is enough. I don't need to keep dragging myself and putting my nose to the grindstone. I've got enough here and I'm just going to be fine with just this, and this will see us through to the end of our times. And that can be a wise decision too. But you can make a wise decision to pursue more income and do that without craving, desire, attachment. That is possible, but your mind needs to learn how to do that, and you might not know how to do that. But let me give you this example of something that's not money that you might be able to see it more clearly. Let's just say you're sitting at home and you're like, I'd like to have a chocolate bar. You know what? It'd be really nice to have a chocolate bar right now. Let me go to the store and see if I can get a chocolate bar. So now you make your way down to the store, you walk into the store and you go to buy a chocolate bar and they're all gone. And it's like, okay, well, no chocolate bar here. And maybe you just decide, okay, well, I'm not going to have a chocolate bar today. That could be one decision that you make. Or it could be like, you know what? I am interested in having a chocolate bar. Let me go to another store and see if they have one over there. That could be a decision that you make too, right? Or it could be like, you know what? I really don't need the chocolate bar. This place has fruit. Let me just get some fruit and I'll eat some fruit, right? So these are all viable decisions that you could make, and they're all could be based in wise decision making and not craving, desire, attachment. So it's not like there's like one right decision in any given situation. But if you were at home and you were like, I want a chocolate bar, I want it, and I want it bad, and now I'm going to make my way to the store and they don't have your chocolate bar, you'll be annoyed, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated, right? And this is where the mind will become unskillful. So this is an example that you can see with a chocolate bar, how you could pursue it with wise decision making, or you could pursue it with craving, desire, attachment. And it's the same thing with money. Money is just one other object that you need in the world, and you can pursue it based on wise decision making, but there's 2, 3, 4, 5 different options here. Or you could choose that, hey, I've got enough and this is completely fine for me. And now all this extra money that's coming in, maybe I'll use it to practice some generosity in different places. But what you're not interested in doing is craving it and chasing after it. Because if you want a certain amount of income, you'll chase that. And when you get to it, you'll be happy for it a period of time. But then you're going to want more. Your expectations are going to grow. Your craving is going to grow. And now you feel sad again. And you got to keep chasing, chasing, and chasing, and chasing, and chasing. So you can pursue money or any other thing in the world without craving, desire, attachment. But the mind needs to learn how to do this.
Thank you. I guess it's a difference between craving and interest, and making sure that it's an interest, not a craving. And that's the hard part, I guess.
Exactly. And that's why I talk about it as a goal, objective, or interest. That's the wise decision making that you're working towards. But oftentimes when people set goals in the unenlightened state, there's a craving behind it. So if they get to their goal, they feel happy. And if they don't, they feel sad. That's not a true goal. That's actually a craving, desire, attachment. So you would like to set true goals. What a true goal is that you can obtain that goal and be completely fine, or not obtain that goal and be completely fine as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, looks like Helena has a question.
Thank you. So, could an enlightened being pursue, like, looking good as an interest, and maybe potentially even go for like procedures to look good, but not as a craving, but just as an interest?
In my opinion, I think that an enlightened being wouldn't get like a plastic surgery because they're completely comfortable with impermanence and they know that that's just fine. But I don't know that to be 100% sure because there could potentially be somebody whose livelihood is based on their appearance, and perhaps they might find it advantageous to look a certain way for their career and for their livelihood. But I haven't seen that example, but I suspect an enlightened being isn't going to be doing any plastic surgery for cosmetic reasons. You know, there's also plastic surgeries that are important for health reasons. Like I had plastic surgery on my nose like 2 or 3 times because it was broken, and they consider this plastic surgery. So when I was in the US and I had insurance, the doctors had to write the justification and show that it wasn't for cosmetic purposes. So I think that this is the case, but since I don't know anybody who is in a profession like that and is enlightened, I can't say with 100% certainty. But because an individual doesn't have personal existence view, I would suspect that if they were an actor or a celebrity or something like this, they would be completely comfortable with the impermanent nature of the body. And if their fame goes down because they don't look a certain way, they would be completely fine. And they would probably just switch careers, I would imagine. But I really don't know with 100% certainty because I would need to talk with somebody who's enlightened in actually doing a career like that.
Okay, I understand. And what about beautiful house, like decorating, stuff like that?
Yeah, so an enlightened being would be fine with their house being decorated and kept up and looking nice, but an enlightened being could also be just fine with the house just, looking standard and normal. But they're not going to be forming their feelings on making their house look a certain way. So for example, like the place where I grew up, in a neighborhood, there's oftentimes different people cutting their grass and trying to make their lawn look perfect because they're afraid of somebody judging them and looking a certain way. So an enlightened being would be willing to cut their grass and make their house look nice, but they're not going to be worried about somebody judging them because of it. They'll just make wise decisions to do it, but they're not going to be comparing and measuring themselves of how other people look versus how their house looks. But they can still make wise decisions to maintain their home, because like having a nice coat of paint on your house will protect the house. That's the whole purpose of paint, is to protect the surface so that as the weather and the sun is hitting the building, that it doesn't erode and deteriorate. So there's this middle way where is if you craved and chased and you were trying to make your house look perfect every moment, that's not going to promote peacefulness in the mind. But if you were all the way on the other side where you could care less about how your house looked and you didn't keep it and maintain it, it would start to deteriorate. So you would like to strike up this middle way where you're maintaining the appearance of your home, but you're not doing it based on your cravings, desires, attachments, and you're not forming your inner feelings based on these things, but you're just doing it out of wise decision making.
But the middle way would be different for different people, right?
Yes.
If someone...
Yes. Sorry, okay. I thought you were done. But yes, that's where the middle way, it's not a permanent thing, right? And this is where people sometimes get confused, where they might think like, well, if an enlightened being doesn't have sensual desire, then they wouldn't eat a chocolate bar, would they? Well, this is not true, right? You can enjoy your food without having craving, desire, attachment for it. Or you can choose to maintain your home without having craving, desire, attachment. So different people are going to make different decisions and their middle way is going to be different. But the same thing that is occurring for all enlightened beings is they're not forming their inner feelings based on some external thing. So whether they choose to make their house look a certain way or not, that's not what determines whether somebody is enlightened or not. It's not the external things. It's how the mind is processing the world around you and whether or not your mind is polluted with any of these pollutions. So sometimes people think like getting to enlightenment, there's like these cookie cutter, right? And like everybody's going to be exactly the same. Like everybody's going to keep their house looking a certain way, or everyone's going to dress a certain way. That would be permanence. So enlightened beings will have different personalities, different characters. They will have different types of home, different sizes of homes. They will upkeep their house in different ways. They will have different things that they're doing, but they're all the same in that their mind isn't experiencing discontentedness. That's the thing that's going to be the same with all enlightened beings.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let me see if we have any questions on Facebook or YouTube. I don't see any questions there. So let's go to the next chapter, chapter 29. Okay, Brent, go ahead, sir.
Dependent origination. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the elimination of this, that ceases.
Okay, thank you, Brent. So I've been kind of referring to dependent origination throughout the Pali Canon English study group. This is not the part of dependent origination that I've been referring to. This is like a simplified version of dependent origination, which is kind of like a lead-in to the ultimate dependent origination. You will see the detailed dependent origination in Volume 5, Chapter 14. But this is like what you need to learn before you actually learn actual dependent origination, the intricate details of dependent origination. This is just helping you to see causality and causally arisen objects, that if this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. It's showing this cause and effect, or cause and effect. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the elimination of this, that ceases. So all the Buddhist teachings, in one way or another, are related to this cause and effect, or action and result, like the chapter we were just studying, with craving leading to seeking, and seeking leading to material gain, and these kinds of things. The Buddha is showing you this cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. And this is what's important for you to be able to learn his teachings, because he's typically showing you one particular cause, and then he's going through multiple causality, and he's ultimately getting to the ultimate effect, which is in that last chapter, the arguments, the disputes, the harsh speech, showing you how craving leads to this thing. And there might be 12 or so interlinking steps. So one of the ways you can think about this is, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. So by choosing to learn English, you can then fill out a job application. By filling out a job application, you can get an interview for a job. By getting an interview for a job, you can actually obtain a job. By getting a job, you can make an income. By getting an income, you can purchase food and clothing. By purchasing food and clothing, you can go outside and participate in the wider community. By participating in the wider community, you can have friends. And now, when you have problems that you need someone to talk to, you have friends to be able to talk to, right? So it's learning English that led to being able to have friends and have someone to talk to when you have problems. But there's all these interlinking steps that got you there, right? So that's what the Buddha is showing, is this causality. But when this does not exist, that doesn't come to be. With the elimination of this, that ceases. If you don't learn English, you can't fill out your job application. And if you don't fill out your job application, you can't get a job interview. If you don't get a job interview, you won't get a job. If you don't get a job, you can't have an income. If you don't have an income, you can't purchase food and clothing. If you don't purchase food and clothing, then you can't go out in the world and participate. And you can't have friends, so that now when you have a problem or you need help, you can't actually have someone to talk to. Right? So that's what the Buddha is showing you, that when this does not exist, that doesn't come to be. And there's this sequence of events that leads to all these different things, because what he's teaching you all throughout his teachings is this wise decision making that leads to wholesome results, and these unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And if you can see these interlinking steps, you can completely dismantle all the difficulties and struggles in your life. You can see this causality of how one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. And when you study dependent origination, the actual detailed version, he's going to show you exactly what's leading to rebirth and discontentedness in 12 interlinking steps. So you need to be able to see this causality, or causally arisen objects, of how one thing leads to the other. And this is something that you need to study before you get into the actual dependent origination. And you're probably starting to see this more and more clearly, not just in the teachings of the Buddha, but in your day-to-day life. That when you speak harsh, people don't want to be around you. When you talk gentle, you have lots of people that are interested in being around you, right? This is the cause and effect. And you can start seeing this cause and effect more and more, right, in your life. And then as you see that cause and effect, you're interested in more and more making wise decisions that's producing wholesome outcomes. Because if you can see this causality, and you can not only see the wholesome side of it, but you can see the unwholesome side, the natural law of karma is your best, most unbiased teacher. It's going to show you every step of the way where are you making wise decisions and where are you making unwise decisions. Because whenever you see something wholesome coming back to you, it's because of certain wise decisions that you made. And where you see something unwholesome, it's from certain unwise decisions that you're making. And you just need to figure out what are the wise decisions and what are the unwise decisions. The Buddha's giving you those details throughout his teachings, but you're going to need to learn some of these on your own too, because he's not teaching you every single thing that you need to get to enlightenment. He's teaching you how to purify the mind and how to train your mind and how to use tools and techniques, but you're going to need to be able to discern some of these things on your own in your day-to-day life, that when you see certain things occurring, either wholesome or unwholesome, you're going to have to back it up and see what are the causes and conditions that led to that thing. Because if you're experiencing wholesome results, you'd like to keep doing those kinds of things. But if you're experiencing unwholesome results, you'd like to stop doing those kinds of things. So this is how your mind gains more and more wisdom, by seeing this causality and this cause and effect. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Looks like Helena has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. So if there is a chain of cause and effect and it's very long, then how can we figure out what the cause was? So in that example you gave, like from learning English to getting or not getting support of friends, like how can we link those two things together when we are searching for the cause?
Sure. So you try to discern as much of this on your own as you can. But when something unwholesome is happening in your life and you don't understand why, that's why you have a teacher. You need to be able to come to your teacher and say, hey, look, this is the unwholesome thing that's happening in my life. I've looked at it. I think that it's these things, but I'm not really sure. Or I'd just like to confirm that I'm on the right track here. Can you help me discern and figure out what it is that's causing this? Because obviously you're interested in stopping it from occurring. Or likewise, if you have wholesome things happening and you'd like to figure that out and you can't figure out why those things are happening, you can seek guidance from your teacher. And then more and more, when you start learning how to do this, you'll get better and better at doing it.
With wisdom, right? The more wisdom we have, the more we see the cause and effect.
Exactly. And that's what the Buddha talks about. As you're getting to enlightenment, he talks about this vision that you can now see clearly the natural laws. You see true reality. You see all the causes and conditions that are leading to wholesome results, and you see the causes and conditions that are leading to unwholesome results. Now your mind is fully awake to the natural law of karma.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. It looks like someone had some questions here, Hans. Let's see, with the elimination, I think I answered your questions, but I'm not sure. If I haven't answered your question, let me know, Hans, but I think I did. Feel free to ask more if you'd like. Okay, let me take a look here. Nope, I haven't answered your question. Is that what you're saying? Okay, so you're saying with the elimination of this, that ceases. Can you please elaborate? So it's like, if you eliminate a bacteria from the body, then you will no longer be coughing and sneezing, right? This is like with the elimination of that, this ceases to exist. So that's why you would like to see that cause and effect so that you can make wise decisions about things in the world and what you need to do in order to conduct yourself in the world. Does that help you? Maybe you were saying nope, that I don't have any more questions. Okay, I'm going to keep going, Hans, but if you have any more questions, feel free to let me know. This is the last chapter for today, The Cause of Ill Will, chapter 30. Would somebody like to read this one? Okay, Keely, go ahead, ma'am.
Cause of ill will. By what feathers, sir, are beings bound, gods, humans, aruras, nagas, gahabas, and whatever other kinds there may be, whereby although they aspire to live without hate, harming, hostility, or ill will, and in peace, they get
live in hate, harming one another, hostile and with ill will. Ruler of gods, it is the bonds of jealousy and material gain that bind beings so that, though they aspire to live without hate, harming, hostility, or ill will, and in peace they yet live in hate, harming one another, hostile and with ill will. But, sir, what gives rise to jealousy and material gain? What is their origin? How are they born? How do they arise? Owing to their presence of what do they arise? Owing to their absence of what do they not arise? Jealousy and material gain. Ruler of gods, take rise from happiness and sadness. This is their origin. This is how they are born, how they arise. When these are present, they arise. When these are absent, they do not arise. But, sir, what gives rise to being happy and sad? What is their origin? How are they born? How do they arise? Owing to the presence of what do they arise, owing to the absence of what do they not arise. They arise, ruler of the gods, from craving, desire. Due to the presence of craving, desire, they arise. Due to the absence of craving, desire, they do not arise. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So this time the discourse is working in the opposite direction and is starting with, what is being experienced, and it's leading down to the actual cause of this thing. So this person is essentially asking the Buddha, what causes ill will? What causes harming and hate and this ill will, where beings are interested in being in peace, but yet they harm each other and they have hostility. Then the Buddha says, okay, what leads to this is the jealousy in the material gain. That's what's leading to this harm and hating one another. And then, okay, well, what's leading to the jealousy and the material gain? The Buddha says, okay, it's the rise of happiness and sadness. That's what's leading to that. That when they essentially have this material gain and this jealousy, there's this happiness and this sadness that arises. Okay, well, what's arising the happiness and sadness? What's causing that? Oh, it's the craving, desire, attachment. The Buddha's working in the opposite direction because now it's this ruler of the gods is asking questions. This is a being in the heavenly realm is asking the Buddha questions. So now the Buddha is explaining that it's craving, desire, attachment that arises that is leading to all of this up here, this ill will. Right? So at the top line, the Buddha's being asked about ill will. Essentially, what arises ill will? What is the cause of ill will? Why does ill will keep arising? Well, the Buddha goes through a whole series of things here, and then ultimately he gets to it's craving, desire, attachment that arises ill will. And then due to the absence of craving, desire, attachment, then there won't be any ill will. Right? So this is how you can do this. This is just flipped upside down from the last one that we were looking at. So any questions here on this one? Okay, looks like Helena has questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. And more than one, in fact. So first of all, who is the ruler of the gods, and how did he talk to the Buddha?
Sure. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, they described a certain cosmology that existed. We know the 5 realms of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, heavenly realm. But then the Buddha separated these realms, particularly hell and the heavenly realm. He put subcategories in there. And then he actually described individual beings within each one of these realms. And I don't teach that you need to learn all of those subcategories and all those individual beings because it doesn't lead to the elimination of discontentedness. Nowadays, we tend to just think about these realms in general sense. Hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human, and heavenly realm. But just like in the animal realm, we have different species of cats and dogs and lizards and snakes and bears and tigers. It's the same thing in these other realms, the formless realms. There's different types of beings in these formless realms. And it was not uncommon for beings in the heavenly realm to come to the Buddha and ask for teaching and guidance. There's different accounts in the Pali Canon where he could be like in a field at nighttime and maybe even, getting ready to go to sleep, and the whole sky would light up and these heavenly beings would be asking questions. Like other people, not just the Buddha, but other people could hear these voices from the heavens asking the Buddha questions, because oftentimes we view these realms as being really far and distant away, but these beings are all within the same time and space as us. And these beings would light up the sky, alerting that, okay, it's us that's here, and now they're going to start talking, and then you could hear that. Whereas if there was just voices that were being heard, the people present, the human beings being present, they wouldn't know where those voices were coming from. So this is how beings would come to the Buddha and ask questions from the heavenly realm.
And other students could hear it, and that's why it's in the... Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now...
Not just hear it, but
What
see
about-
it also.
Sorry, say again, please.
Not just hear it, but see it also.
Just wow.
Because they would light up the sky.
Okay. And when it comes to jealousy, how can heavenly beings feel jealousy if they only have pleasant conditioned feelings?
Here, they're not necessarily saying that they have jealousy. They're just asking what leads to jealousy.
Okay. So that jealousy would be like, they are asking about humans, essentially, or animals.
Yeah, because a heavenly being isn't going to experience jealousy, because that's part of the painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings.
Okay. And lastly, they're talking about nagas. So those are those snake-like mythical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know if they would belong to the heavenly realm?
So nagas are part of the animal realm, but they can be reborn into any other realm as well. So this particular being, the ruler of the gods, is asking questions to the Buddha about these other beings. But
Okay.
But it doesn't mean these beings are in the heavenly realm with this ruler of the gods.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Vibhav, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I guess, more of a comment. It seems like he's combining the three poisons and dependent origination here, right? That's how he's describing it.
He's not combining the dependent origination, but if you look at that dependent origination from the last one, that basic dependent origination just cause and effect, or action and result. So here he's helping you to be able to see what is causing ill will, what is causing anger and frustration and all those lesser versions. It's craving, desire, attachment that's leading to that. And that's why when you look at the 4 stages of enlightenment, that central desire and ill will, they're essentially together, even though they're 2 separate fetters. That when you're eliminating central desire, it's eliminating ill will too. And that's why those fetters get eliminated together, essentially. It's because whenever we talk about craving, desire, attachment, we're primarily talking about central desire. There are cravings, desires, attachments that aren't central desire, but primarily we're talking about the central desire, that 4th fetter. And then these two are essentially linked, that it's because of the lack of wisdom or the ignorance that craving and ill will continue to exist, or craving and anger continues to exist. And he's showing you that causality in this answers that he's given to this particular being.
Okay. And sorry, I had a follow-up question on the sensual desire being part of the first stage of enlightenment. Can I ask a question now? Or?
Sure.
So you said before that on the specific piece of having a sexual desire, sexual attachment with your spouse, you can enjoy till like second stage of enlightenment. But the actual fetter, the sensual desire, is eliminated at the first, before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. So how do you eliminate sensual desire but still have like a sexual life with sexual contact with your partner?
This is a misunderstanding for you, Vibhav. Central desire doesn't get eliminated until you get to the 3rd stage of enlightenment. In the 1st stage of enlightenment, you still have central desire in the 1st stage. It's not until you move into the 2nd stage that central desire is thinned out and ill will is thinned out. But it's not until the 3rd stage that they're completely eliminated.
Okay, so the first 3 are it's the first 3 that are part of the first stage of enlightenment. person existence view, doubt, and wrong observances, right? That's the first three.
Wrong behavior and observances, yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining for our class today. Thank you for those of you guys that read. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for those of you guys that are even just interested in learning and you maybe didn't even ask any questions, or you didn't even read, and that's fine because you're learning and you're growing, you're developing, and you're understanding the teachings of the Buddha more and more. So thank you for your dedication and your diligence to learning, because this is the best thing for you, those close to you, and all of humanity as you're training your mind and you're becoming wiser and wiser. And you're able to train your mind to become more peaceful and more joyful in the world. So thank you for your dedication and your interest to learn. Next week, we're going to be in the next 10 chapters, which is chapters 31 through 40. This is volume 3 that we're going to continue with. And we're going to be in this book for a while. I think it goes up to 124 chapters. So we're going to be in this book for a while as we go through the Pali Canon and English study group. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be in chapter 20 of volume 1. This chapter is titled Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness. This is where you're going to learn about the 5 realms of existence and what happens in those 5 realms. You're going to learn about how our consciousness in the human realm evolves out of the animal realm and how individuals observe past lives and things like this. So it's kind of like the first time I start introducing students to the cycle of rebirth. Now that they've learned a whole lot of the teachings, I just start kind of introducing them to the cycle of rebirth a bit there at the end of that program. So you're welcome to attend that or watch the recordings if you like. And then on Monday, I'm going to be starting a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course here in Chiang Mai at the temple. So you're welcome to attend live, or you're welcome to watch the replays or attend through the live streams or any of those kinds of things. And then, of course, as you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can ask questions in classes in the Facebook group, by sending private messages, or by scheduling personal guidance with me. So thank you all again for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.